Hello everyone, my name is Kaylee. Today I'll be presenting a code review of two code bases, an animal rescue dashboard application and a text-based game. So I'm going to inspect the current state of the code bases, highlighting any limitations and vulnerabilities, and then explain the enhancement plan. Okay, let's get started. This is the Animal Rescue Training Web Application Dashboard. The purpose of the dashboards is to assist in identifying dogs for training by presenting data visually and interactively. This application used Dash and Python to build the interface and Dash Liftlet to build the map-based interaction. It allows users to view the animal's information and filter data based on specific parameters. Here, this is the Animal Rescue Dashboard application interface. The dashboard interface has a branding requirement, the Gracioso's logo in the center right here, and a unique identifier on the top of the interface, which is my name, the class I took when I completed this project, and as well as some interactive wedges such as the filter button on the left above the data table. And then we have the data table right here. Then we scroll down a little bit. Then we'll see the location chart and the pie graph. All of these widgets respond to the filter button to retrieve data related to the type of rescued based on the breed, the sex, and the age. Now let's look at the filter option. There's the water rescue, mountain wilderness rescue, and disaster individual tracking, and lastly, the reset button. Okay, let's click them and explore. As you can see, the table, the map, and the pie graph update as I click the filter button. Now we have completed the exploration of the interactive widget on the interface. I'm interested to getting into the underlying code to see how everything's function and how everything put together behind the scene. Okay, here we are. We are at the backstage of this beautiful application that we were just exploring. Let's look into it. We will examine the structure, the documentation, the queries, the branches, the variable uses, and the defensive program, if any, in this project. First thing first, we'll check out the structure to see the setup. Now here, as we can see, this is the setup for the libraries, and this is the setup for the Python modules that holds the CRUD Python modules, which is the create, read, update, and delete modules. We'll talk about that later. And the next setup is for the data manipulation. And then following setup is the dashboard layout, which is what we saw on the interface. And this is also the setup that for the chart and the pie chart and the map. Moving down, this is the setup for the interaction components and controller, which means is the callback and the function. And these callback functions provide the application main functionality. When the user click the button, as we explored earlier, the table and chart are updated dynamically based on the data selection. So all of this callback function, callback function, callback function. And this is the setup for the click too. And then we'll dive into it. And now let's move on and take a look at the documentation, queries, branches, and the variable used line by line. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the setup for the libraries, and this is the animal class, the animal shelter class that holds the create, read, update, delete function, and also connecting to the database. And here, we'll start here, and this is the username, and this is the password. And to activate, using the username and password to activate the animal shelter class, and we assigned it to the name DB, which short for database. And once it is activated, the application will read the database and store it in Dependence data frame. And we assigned it to name DF, short for data frame. And this is just also another variable name uses to assign the image of the Gracioso logo. And this is to assign the read function to open the image file and read function. And this is to call the Jupyter Dash. And this is to set the previous click button for the filter button. You see the button 0 set to 0, button 1 set to 0, button 2 set to 0, button 3 set to 0. We'll go over that later and we'll explain further when we get to the on click function. Now this is the layout, and remember we had the header, which is the identifier of my name and the class that I took for doing this project. And this is the image. This is the image for the logos and the size of the image that's set here. And this is to set up the button, which have the ID names. And this is the name of the button on the interface, reset to all, water, mountain, wilderness, diaster, and the individual tracking. And this is the data table. And with the ID name, data table dash ID. And this is the loop that to read all the columns in the the data frame, and will go into the data table accordingly. And this is the setting for the data tables. And this is also the setup for the graph and map. Now we get into the callbacks and function. So the first callback and function is to highlight the cell on the data table when the user selected. So as you can see, the input is when we click the select columns, and will output on the data table, which is the color. This is the color that will output on the table. And the second callback is the map callback, which is ID map ID, which match the top here, right? And so output on the map and input, meaning if the data table changes, and then it will update the map as well. And this is the function letting the map know is to get update. And this is output on the graph, input the data table, which means the data table changes, then will output on the graph. And this is the function, the logic in the function here. And this is the callback and functions for the filter button. So as you can see, the input is the button 0, button 1, button 2, button 3, submit this button on end clicked, and will output on the data table. And this is the logic of the function first, the very first, because it's start case. So it start off just all the data in the data frame without any filter. Now, as we remember earlier, there was a dictionary assigned to app that previous click. and we'll call the key the button 0. So if the button 0 click greater than what is was set to 0, over here we'll update the button and the and we'll filter the data table as per the logic like this. And it's based on breed, sex, and age, as I mentioned earlier. So now this is at the end of the dashboard layout and callback and functions. So we'll look into the animal shelter Python file to check out the CRUD functions. Again, the create, read, update, and delete, and also the database. Here, this is the animal shelter Python file that hosts the connection to the database and the CRUD methods. Same as earlier, we'll go over the structure, then the documentation, queries, branches, the variable uses, and the defensive program, if any. So now first thing, we will go over the structure. So here is the import the necessary library, and this is the class name, and this is to assign the variable to the connection, and this is to initialize the connection. And then next we'll have the CRUD methods, such as create function, read function, update function, and delete function. Now let's go over the codes line by line. So this is the libraries to connect to the MongoDB. And this is the class name, which is animal shelter. And this right here is to initialize a new instance for the class, which is using the username and password. And these are the variables to assign for later to connect to the database. So like right here, you see this line right here is to connect to the database MongoDB. And this is the username and password, which it will be here. And the host right here. And the port number and the database name right here. And this line right here is to access the database. And the line right here is to access the collections, which is the animals. And next we'll talk about the create functions. The create function is to insert new data into the database. This line right here is to check if the data is provided. And here is to insert the data into the collection, that which is the animal collections. And if it's successful, return to true. If it's not successful, return to false. And this right here is the error message um, to let the user know that if the data is empty. That means if they entered it empty data. And next is the read function right here. This entire here is for the read function. And you see the here has a asterisk, and this mean is to allow function to pass any number of arguments. So the read function is for search as database for document, matches any given criteria. And sometimes we need to search more than one argument. So this will allow the user to put multiple arguments and this function will search for them. And we'll start off with an empty dictionary and assign to the name queries. And this loop right here is to put all the arguments in update into the empty dictionary queries. And this line right here is to find the data, the document arguments from the empty dictionary and store them into a list and name the result, and then we'll return to it. And next will be that we'll talk about is the update function right here. And you can see there's a double asterisk instead of one. This mean is name value pair. And this one right here is stand for keyword argument, meaning you can pass any number of name value pair argument in here. So which means the user can find the argument as many as criteria as they want and update as many as they need. So here we'll start off with two empty dictionary and we name this one find exist data and this one will name set update. Now here has two loop and the first loop is put all those arguments into this dictionary, find exist data. And this loop right here is put all the keyword argument into set update dictionary. And also if this dictionary is not none, then we'll update many, find exist data, and set them using the set update. So first, they will find the existing data arguments and then set with the keyword arguments. And this line right here is to count how many documents were modified. And this one is to print out how many documents that was modified. And this is to return the update. And this is also another error message letting the user know that the criteria was empty. And this function update documents based on the condition and provided feedback on the number modified. And it allows the flexibility, multi-condition searches in the database for this two function right here. And lastly is the delete function here. The delete function is to remove the documents from the database on given criteria. And this is the given criteria. And again, here is to check if the removed data was provided or not. And now, so if it's not none, then it will delete all the criteria, remove data. And this line right here is to count how many documents that was deleted. And this line right here is to print the number of delete documents. And the return is the result of the deletion. And then another error message if the search criteria is empty. So now we have complete the inspection of the code, and I would like to talk about the findings. Overall, the application and Python code are well organized and the sessions are clear. However, there are rooms to improve in the documentation for each function, which should clarify the complex part of the function, especially the data filtering and the callback updates, which is over here, the logic for the filter button, and some unnecessary documentation comments, fix me, and some on the top right here that can be removed. The ID, the variable names assignments are meaningful, which contribute to readability. However, there is some hard-coded value in the file, which is the username and password, which raise security concern, that definitely have to be fixed. The current version of the dashboard does not have any form of user authentication, which open to unauthorized access. So for that being said, here come the exciting part. The enhancement plan. I'm going to use this application to focus on two categories: software engineering and design, algorithm, and data structure. Let me show you the flowchart that concentrate on software engineering and design first, involving adding a user sign-in and registration process. Here, this is the flowchart. The goal here is to create a user-friendly authentication system allowing only authorized user to access the dashboard. Now let's take a look at the flowchart. The user start the application, and once the application is started, it will show a sign-in interface. The user will make a decision to either sign in or register. If the user already have a credential, then they will enter their username and password. The system will validate the credential from the database. If it passes, they'll read the data and access the dashboard. If it doesn't pass, they will display an error message and return to the user sign-in interface. If the user doesn't already have a credential, then they will register their username and password, click submit. The system will validate the credential if it fit into the criteria. And if it does passes, then we'll store the username and user password into the data and return to the sign-in interface so the user can sign in and access the dashboard following this system. If the user enter something that does not fit the criteria, then will display an error message and return to the register sign-in interface where the user have to re-sign in or re-register. By adding a user sign-in and registration process, I'm creating a collaborative environment by adding user account so different user can access and interact with the data securely. I'm also include professional comments and detailed documentation for each part of the sign-in and registration feature, making the code base more accessible to other developers. Okay, now the next category is algorithm and data structure. Let me pull up the next flowchart. For algorithm and data structure, the plan is to integrate the password hashing using algorithm like Bcrypt. The hash password will be stored in the database instead of a plain password. Now let's take a look at the flowchart. Here, as you can see, start meaning the user start the application. And as soon as the user start the application started running, the user will see the user interface, a sign-in interface, where the user will have to make a decision. Either they already have a credential to sign in or they do not have one. So let's say if they don't have a credential to sign in, then they will have to input the criteria to register user name and password. And once the username and password is entered to register, then the system will get salt and hash the user password using the Bcrypt algorithm. And if it passes, then we'll store the username and then also the hash password instead of the plain language password. And the interface will return back to sign in, where user can sign in their using their credential. And the system will first find the username. And if the username is found, then the system will check the password using the Bcrypt algorithm. And if it passes, user can sign in successfully and access the dashboard. If the username is not found, or if the password is incorrect, then we'll display an error message. Or if the user enter a credential that does not fit the criteria for registration, also will display an error message letting the user know and return back to the user interface where they have to re-enter the credential for sign-in or registration. So adding authentication mechanism to the dashboard, the application will align with computing solution by providing effective and secure meaning to make sure user credentials are not stored in an exploitable format and verifying users. Now we have complete the inspection and the enhancement plan for the animal rescue dashboard application across the two categories, software engineering and design, algorithm, and data structure. We'll move forward to examining the code base and discuss the enhancement plan for the text-based game, which align to category 3, database. Now we're on to the category 3, database text-based game. The name of the game is Don't Wake Dad. It's a simple game where players navigate through rooms, collecting items while trying not to wake the character Dad. This project showcased basic game logic where players move through a set of rooms and get items from each room using specific commands. Okay, let's take a look at the storyboard map. Player will start in the welcome room right here and will travel to each room using north, east, south, west command to collect each item from the room to win the game. If the player accidentally went to the parent's bedroom and woke dad, then game over. So now let's check the getting item flowchart. So here, this is the flowchart to show how the player collects the item. So players start the game and will show that to tell the player you must collect the 6 item and show the player that command words is grab and the item. Then user will input the grab the proper items, and if it's true, then the item is picked up and will store into the inventory list, and then will and if the player collects the 6 item and didn't accidentally travel to the parent's room, the player won the game. However, if the user used the wrong command word, like instead of grab, they're using something else, or improper spelling of the valid item word, then either or it will show that it's to show the player either they use the wrong command word or they use the wrong item name. But either or, they still need to re-enter the proper command word and the valid item until it's true. Then we'll win or lose the game following this system right here. Okay, I have explained how the game is played. Let's inspect the code. Here, this is the Don't Wake Dad's game code base. Just like the other reviews, we'll check out the structure first, then examine the code line by line. Okay, let's take a look at the structure. So it started with a show instruction function that is written, and then another written function for show player status, And then this is the directory for the rooms and the item in the room. And this is where the code start. Then this is the loop for user command, that if the user command is not exit, and then what's going to happen here. We'll go over the logic later when we go over the code line by lines. Okay, let's take a look at the first function of the code, which is show instruction. Show instruction function is to print a main menu and the commands for the player, which mean the instruction of the game. So there's some welcome message, and the goal of the game is to pick up 6 items to clean the house before dads wake up. And the instructions are clear, using move command to move around the room south, north, east, west, and adding item to the basket using the command word grab and the item. And then if the player want to quit the game anytime, just type the word exit. Let's move on to the second function that is written in the code. The second function is the show player status function. Is to show player status, current room, item in the room, item in the inventory list, game over status, and the winning status. So let's take a look at the code here. This is called global user command, which is mean that the user command can be used in any other function in the code. And if the current room is welcome room, then we'll print the current room to let the player know where they're at, and the basket, that what is in the inventory if anything is in there. And this is just to print the dash 30 time as a separator. And this one here is to accept the user player input, and we'll name it whatever the input is, to name it the user command, which we globalize here. And if the current room is either of this room that is written here, we'll also print to let the player know what room they're in and what is in the inventory, which means the basket, what's in the basket, if there's anything in there. If the current room that they're in and the item that is in the room not already in the inventory list, meaning not already in the player basket, then they will let the player know you see what is the item in the room. And if the inventory list, the element that inside the inventory list and equals to 6 items, then meaning that the player won the game, and we'll print out the congratulation winning message, and the game will be exit after the winning. And here is another message for if the player accidentally went into the player's room, then they lose the game, and the game is over, and the exit. Okay, let's take a look at the dictionary for the rooms and item. The name of this dictionary is room. We know that dictionary encoding means key value pair, but look carefully. This is actually a nested dictionary, meaning a dictionary inside another dictionary. So the room name before the colon, like the welcome room, kitchen, living room, office, bathroom, Trinity's bedroom, Travis' bedroom, parents' room are the key in the outer dictionary. The value associated with each key is in the nested dictionary containing the direction, the other rooms, item, and object. So let's take a look. So meaning what I'm trying to say is everything inside this curly bracket are the value of the key. And inside the curly brackets also have key and value. I'm going to use living room as an example to explain this. So, living room is the key of the outer dictionary, and the inner dictionary also have key and value pair. So, north would be the key, welcome room would be the value, east would be the key, Travis bedroom would be the value, and lastly is item is the key, toilet paper here is the value. So, meaning if the player is in the living room, and if the player type in north, and will go to the welcome room, and if the player type in east, then will travel to Travis bedroom, and if the player type in toilet paper, then that would be the item in living room. So this is what dictionary inside of the dictionary means. Okay, now we have went over the dictionary and let's move on to the code start. So this is where the code start. So it means the first line right here, current room equals to welcome room, meaning the players start off in the welcome room, like right here that we mentioned earlier. And we have an empty user command to start off. And we also have an empty list for the user command item, meaning when user type in the item object, it will store into this list. And this too is to call the function that we went over earlier to show the instruction status and the player status. Okay, now let's move to see the while loop. Okay, let's take a look at the while loop right here. So while the user command is not exit, then all of this will start. So this tells me that this part of the code is for the user, for the player to move around the room. So if the user command of any of these directions, then here has assigned a direction, the room, current room. So let's see what this mean is to call really. Let me pull up. It really meaning to call the the dictionary that we went over earlier. So the room names and the current room, this is the key. So we assigned it and names the direction. So if the username in this direction, the current room will be equals to the room, right? The room dictionary and the current room. And then we'll go to any of these directions, south, north, east, depending on what the player typed in, and we'll output the value as living room, bedroom, or the office. And then we'll show the player status, then call the player status function that we went over earlier. Or else, if it's not, then it's a wrong direction, and we'll also continue to show the player status function again. Okay, let's move on to the following logic to how to collect the item. So, welcome room does not have an item, so the current room cannot be in the welcome room to play this code. So, if the current room is not a welcome room, and user command will equals to grab room current room items, meaning the room current room, whatever room that they are in, and if there's item, and this is the item key and the value. So if the item is not already in the inventory list, then we'll append the item into the inventory list, and we'll show the player got it, and then the item name, and in the basket, and telling them good job, and then also again show player status is called. So to avoid any duplicate in the list, it will print so or else the item is already in the basket, and then show the player status function again. Otherwise, then will be invalid input, and then again we'll call player status. And here, this is just a little example that what I did to run the game. It start up with the instruction, welcome to Wick That's game. Pick up 6 messy item to clean the house before that's pick up. Instruction, move command, south, north, east, west, add item to basket, grab item, type exit to quit anytime. This is the message that we went over earlier for the show instruction function. And this is how they start off and then start the game. So the game is start, remember we already knew that the players start in the welcome room and there's nothing in the basket. So enter your move. I enter north, and then now I'm in the bathroom and I see a burrito. So I put grab burrito and I'll put that, oh got it. The burrito in the basket. Good job. So now you can see the basket has the burrito in the list already. And now I'm in the bathroom. Oh, I put north again, and it tells me it's the wrong direction, but my basket still have the item in there. Now I put in east, and I put it, and then now I'm in Trinity's bedroom, and I still have my item in my basket that I picked up earlier. And this time I purposely type in pick up pan, so it shows me invalid input. So that's how, and I didn't continue finish playing the game. I didn't win or I didn't lose. I just didn't play. But I'm gonna type in exit to show now I have exit the game. Okay, let's talk about the overall of the code base. In terms of the structure, it has the clear function for displaying the instruction, the player status, and room navigation. However, it is not modularized. So I would create a class and store the functions in a class to improve readability. And as in terms of the documentation, it is there. However, at the while loop, it should be more descriptive. So to for future improvement and debugging purposes, I'll put more descriptive documentation comments in there. Also, I noticed that there's no data storage for this game for to store player performance, like winning and losing record. And also there's some redundant code of especially at the print. So there's so much print in the show instruction and the show player status. Maybe we can simplify that as well. So for that being said, let's talk about the test-based game enhancement plan to address these limitations here. To address these limitations, I plan to enhance the game with a focus on database category, implementing solution that aligns with computing solution. I'll integrate a database to store player performance after each game sessions. So this addition will track each player's win or lose record to see how they progress over time. This feature aligns with computing solution by effectively organizing and retrieving players' data. At the end of each game, the system will generate an analysis report based on the stored data, providing player with insight of their performance. This process of data mining and analysis encourage innovation technique. It will add replay value and enhance player engagement. Now let's go over the flowchart. Okay, let's take a look at the flowchart. Before I start going over the flowchart, I just want to let you know this part of the flowchart is how the player play the game, and we already know how the player play the game, so we are not going to go over that. So let's start with the player start the game. So players start the game and will display the game instruction, then will immediately ask for the player information instead of starting the game, and then we'll store the player information into the database. Then the player will play the game. Regardless if the player win the game or lose the game, the system will output an analysis report of the player insights, which mean the player performance, how many times they won the game, how many times they lost the game, and the average win and the average loss. So this will provide the insight of the player performance before the game exit. So this will align with the category 3 database, and this is the data mining process. To summarize, the dashboard application will be enhanced with secure sign-in and password hashing, focusing on software engineering and design, and algorithm and data structure. And for the test-based game, I will add a database to record and analyze player performance, generating an analysis report at the end of each game. Each enhancement is designed to promote the five key outcome: collaborative environment, professional communication, computing solution, innovative technique, and a security mindset. So thank you for watching.